Welcome to Gateway. My name is Carlos. This is my wife, Libby, and I'm the pastor at our North Austin location. And we're so glad you've joined us from wherever you might be watching. Before we move forward, I do have one question. What did you think of the video we just watched?
Wow, as a mom, I can totally relate to her, especially with all the emotions motherhood brings.
And so no matter where you are emotionally or spiritually, we want you to know you are welcome here. And all we really ask you to do is have an open heart, have an open mind, and we truly believe amazing things can take place.
Yeah, so try to remove all your distractions and gather your crew as we kick off in worship. You can simply sing along or meditate on the lyrics.
So join us as we sing in thousands of homes across Austin and beyond.
shine upon you. Be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face towards you and give you peace. Lord, bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace. Lord, bless and keep you. Make his face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace.
May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before
Well, if you're new to Gateway, we're so glad that you've joined us. Will you do us a favor of going to gatewaychurch.com and click Get Connected? And by simply putting in your information, if you live in the Austin and surrounding areas, we will mail you a free copy of Imagine Heaven, a book by our lead pastor, John Burke. Now, in this season, a lot of questions coming at us as a church. We want to take a couple of minutes to answer two of them. The first one is, how can I make a difference in this season? Well, aside from blessing your neighbors and making sure you're a great neighbor, taking care of your family, that's the reason why we receive offerings every single weekend. It's already in our DNA as a church to be generous. I mean, we're known for it. We're known for partnering with local partners as well as missions partners because of your generosity and because you go above and beyond. But we also want to acknowledge that some of you want to go even beyond that. So you go to gatewaychurch.com and you click Give Help. And every dollar you give will go towards families who are needing food or shelter in this COVID-19 response time. We're hearing amazing stories, some cool things happening, mobilization across our city because of you going above and beyond. Now, if you're new to Gateway, it's your first time here, there's no pressure and no expectation for you to give. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the service. But if you call Gateway home, let's continue to be faithful because God is taking everything that you're giving and it's being multiplied over and over because of your generosity. Now, the second question coming up is this: when are we going to actually meet in a physical location? Well, the straightforward answer is this: at least not for the month of May. Here's why. We want to have safe planning and training so when we come back together, it's an enjoyable experience for everyone. In the meantime, stay connected online, find every resource you can, find a group to stay connected to, especially at the campus closest to you. And if you find yourself outside of Austin, stay connected at Church Online. Now, John Burke's going to come up. He's going to continue the series, What's After Life, with this week's message, The Great Reunion. But before he joins us, here's a video from our kids ministry.
He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. And all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. And oh, how he loves us. in his eyes. If grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. And heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss. My heart turns violently inside of my chest. I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way, and we are his portion and he is our price. We're drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. If grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. And heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss. And my heart turns violently inside of my chest. I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. He loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he You're breaking chains and making all things new. Your love is coming through. You're making all things new. He loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. He loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves.
Well, happy Mother's Day to all of you out there. You know, there's nothing like seeing the joy of children to bring joy to our hearts, right? You know, and I just want to say to moms and single dads raising kids alone, there is nothing more important than what you're doing to build into the next generation. And, you know, even if you don't have children, you know, as we invest in the next generation, that matters to God because people last. Well, today we are talking about relationships. And you know, if you're just joining us, I want to encourage you to go out to gatewaychurch.com, watch some of the past messages, because we've been looking at 30 years of research I've done, over 1,000 cases of people who clinically die, are resuscitated, but they come back to talk about the life to come. And we've been comparing it to what the scriptures have taught us all along. And you know, one of the biggest questions people have is, what about relationships? You know, we have all kinds of relational questions about the life to come. You know, I think about Ben, one of my son's friends who used to come over and spend the night with us. And Ben had a heart condition, and so he couldn't be too active, but he loved to be active. And inevitably, I would hear pounding on the ceiling, and I have to go up to Justin's room, and Ben and Justin would be jumping off the bed, slam dunking the Nerf, basketball, and I'd have to say, guys, calm down, because it could literally kill Ben. It could stop his heart. And then at age 18, it did. Ben's heart stopped, and he actually had a near-death experience. And it was the week before Christmas, and he put it out on YouTube with these little cards. And then Christmas Day, Ben died. And this video went viral. The Kardashians were tweeting about it. It was in People magazine. I did the funeral for Ben right here on the stage. News outlets broadcasted around the world. People came to faith from Ireland to Tasmania. But at the same time, you go, why? You know, like, why would a kid have to be so held back his whole life, and then relationship life be torn from him at 18? Why would a loving family be ripped apart so quickly? You know, and then we're faced with the brutal murder of Ahmaud Arbery and the tragedy and the injustice of that. And you think about his mom this Mother's Day, or you think about the many mothers who are grieving, thinking that could be my son. And this causes us to struggle with God, right? Why, God? How can any of this make sense? Unless, like the scripture says, this life is not the end, it's the beginning. And like we talked about last week, there is justice coming in heaven. And like I want to talk about this week, and relationships continue on, and how we can start to bring more of heaven to earth today, because that was Jesus' prayer for us. What if the life to come starts to make sense of all that we experience in this life? And what if, like so many say, it's so much better, even a child doesn't want to come back? You know, Megan Hagens is in my wife's life group. She had a near-death experience at 6 years old. Watch what she has to say.
I had my near-death experience when I was 6 years old. I was in first grade, and I was asleep. I had sleep apnea my whole life, and I hadn't realized. I had 2 angels come and get me and take me to heaven, and they were showing me around heaven. There was a section where the angels told me Jesus wanted me to see something. They said we had some time and we could do anything I wanted to, and I wanted to play the game Candyland. So they materialized it and they said, teach us. And as I was teaching them, they were just so full of joy and mirth at the experience of playing this game with me and my explanation of the rules, and they would throw their heads back laughing and say, how could anyone not want to play this game? It's great. And the feeling that was conveyed to me was the great joy of spending time with me and being present with me and making me feel valued for what I brought to them. That is really something that's so important to be present and to not be elsewhere, to be present with the people that you love and spend time with them. It's the best gift you can give people, especially kids, because they get a lot of, I think, their self-worth from understanding that. And then after that, they said I had to go back. And I didn't know what they meant, you have to go back. And I said, I don't want to go back. And they did this kind of thing where they waved their hand, and I could see my school from above. And they said, if you don't go back, your teachers and your friends are going to miss you. They're going to be worried. And I said, I'm sorry, I still don't want to go back. They said that I didn't have to worry. They would always be with me. And that if I ever needed them, I would have the comfort of knowing that they were there. And the next thing I knew, I was in the corner of the kitchen, my home kitchen, up at the ceiling and looking down, and my mother had just come into the kitchen, and the angels were saying to me, if you don't go back, your mom is going to be terribly worried and sad. And I said, okay. So then I was back.
Only mom could bring her back. Imagine a place so great. Not even a kid wants to come back. You know, Jesus said children have a special place in heaven. You know, Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. I mean, could it really be that relationships are made right and in a place so great, not even kids, you know, so full of life would want to come back because it is life. And that's what I want to talk about today. You know, near-death experiencers all across the globe say that when they die, they had this great reunion. But you know, that's what the Bible's told us all along. In the Old Testament, when someone died, it said, and he or she was gathered to his people. And that doesn't just mean buried in an ancestral grave, because many of them weren't. But relationship, it says, was meant to last. Jesus said this his last night on earth to his best friends. He said, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you? I'm going to prepare a place for you. And when it is all ready, I will come back and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. Jesus indicated heaven is relational. People are real. Life goes on. It's like one big loving family of God. And you know, near-death experiencers say they had a welcoming committee. Friends, relatives, loved ones who had invested in their lives. And they said they were there to welcome them, but also to protect them and to guide them on their journey forward. But Jesus also talked about this. In Luke 16:9, he said, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Watch how people describe this great reunion by their welcoming committee.
My family appeared. One of them put their hand out, and I knew it was my grandmother.
And when I looked up, there's my family. Everybody that had been related to me, a part of my family, came to greet me in. My grandmother Mary was out front. She was bright. You know, she had a big smile and pure joy.
I was immediately greeted by a group of people, spirits, beings. They were absolutely exploding with a pure love. And I could be with them, and I knew without any doubt that I had known them and loved them as long as I've existed.
57.3% of those having near-death experience describe meeting other beings. When a deceased loved one is encountered during a near-death experience, they may be around the age they died, or interestingly, they may appear decades younger.
I'm surrounded by people that I had known and loved in life, and they were all perfect in every way, fully recognizable as themselves.
Pero me fijé, cuando miré para derechito, miré a mi mamá y a mi tío.
I'm looking at this man who I recognize by my heart, but I knew that that was Pa. He's my great-grandfather. Now, Pa was standing next to Ma. I knew her as an old woman when I was a kid. When she was in heaven, she looked to be in her 30s. This was my family.
On this right side of me were all these animals coming in. You'll be surprised when you get there and your pet's there to greet you in.
You know, it's funny because people ask me more about whether their pets are going to be there than their family members, which I'm not sure what that means. But yes, your beloved pets will be there. And that's biblical too. You know, Isaiah in Isaiah 11:6, speaking about heaven, says, the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. I mean, this is a place where all God's creatures live in shalom, in God's perfect peace. Everybody gets along. Republicans and Democrats get along in heaven. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing place. So why wouldn't your beloved pets be there as well? And people do see them. Mostly children who have near-death experiences are often welcomed by their pets, maybe because no one they know has died yet, and God knows who will make us feel the warmest as we're greeted in. But I find many people, when they think about heaven, you know, they think about people as these kind of ethereal, ghosty, Patrick Swayze, you know, misty kind of figures. It feels less real, less tangible. And yet Jesus said nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, Jesus said this in Luke 13:29, people will come from east and west and north and south and take their places at the feast in the kingdom of heaven. There's going to be a feast. I mean, remember, the risen Jesus could be touched and embraced. He ate fish. And in fact, he said this his last night on earth when he instituted what we call communion. Look at what else it says. It says, as they were eating, this is Matthew 26, Jesus took some bread and he blessed it. And then he broke it in pieces and he gave it to his disciples saying, take and eat it, for this is my body. And he took a cup of wine and gave thanks to God for it. And he said, drink from it, each one of you, for this is my blood, which confirms the covenant between God and his people. It's poured out as a sacrifice to forgive the sins of many. Then look at what he says. Mark my words. I will not drink wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Eating, drinking, feasting. I mean, it just seems like normal life. Exactly. It's not eternal death. It's eternal life. I mean, look, all the things you love about life, this life, God created. And yeah, we can abuse them. We can overindulge in wine. Instead of loving and treasuring people, we can use people. But everything you love about this life, God created. And we were meant to experience it together again forever, the way it was supposed to be. In relationships, the way they were supposed to be. And it's real. Hugs are real. Memories are real memories there. People we invested in here are the people we will value most and see most there. And this is important because this life is continuous into the next. See, people matter, and how you love and invest in people here goes on with you into the next. You know, Don Piper was driving on a bridge on a rainy day in North Houston when an 18-wheeler went out of control, ran over the top of his car, completely crushed his car, killing him instantly. EMS arrived on the scene, pronounced him dead, but it took them 90 minutes to cut his body out of the wreckage. And yet Don revived to come back to talk about this great reunion. Watch.
I took my last breath on the bridge, and my next breath was at one of the 12 gates of heaven. I mean, there are 12 gates. I was at one of them, 4 on each side of the city. And I didn't go down a long tunnel. There wasn't a bright light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't have a near-death experience, really. If you're dead an hour and a half, you're not nearly dead. I was dead. And so I'm in this light. And I could make out in front of me a whole crew of people, a welcoming committee, if you will. I'm surrounded by people that I had known and loved in life. And everybody looked really good. I mean, if you want to really look good, heaven is where you want to be. And they were all perfect in every way, fully recognizable as themselves, but perfect. Because many of them in earth had been very infirm. They'd been quite old. They were actually missing things here. And they were back there. I mean, my grandfather is extending his hands to me and saying, welcome home, Donnie, in a language I've never heard before, but fully understood. And I looked down and 3 fingers were missing on this hand. When he was alive, he was a lumberjack in his younger days. Very, very dangerous job. So he lost actually digits. Well, when I was a little kid, I was completely fascinated by that because he had this little stub sticking up. But now I'm seeing real fingers there. I'd never seen them before. My great-grandmother was standing beside him. She didn't have any teeth here on earth. But now she smiled at me. And it was her real smile. I didn't sense at all that we were spirits or intangible. I really felt that. In fact, my grandfather embraced me, and as he said those words, welcome home, Donnie, which was his name for me here on earth, Donnie. And the other people did as well. I felt pats on the back. It was embracing. It was pure love. But it was overwhelming, frankly. It was just deliriously wonderful. Some of these people I hadn't seen for 20 years or more. Some of them had died subsequent to that, maybe only a few years prior to my death on the bridge. So there was no sense of age about them. There was no sense of infirmity about them. As I said, they were expecting me. It was a great reunion. I think heaven is a great reunion. As I saw all these people, whether they were teachers or aunts or uncles, or even my next door neighbor, Miss Norris, was standing over here. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome. It's wonderful. It's so great to see them and to see them so perfect. So I asked myself, why did this particular group come? Because they didn't even know each other on earth. And the reason I believe is because they helped me get there. These are the people who, prior to their death, influenced me for Christ. Mike would take me physically to Sunday school because he'd been a Christian since he was like 9 or 10 years old. So Miss Norris would come by and put me in that car with all those kids and take me to Summer Grove Church. So these are the people who helped me come to Christ, to come to know Christ. So I came back from that encounter with all those wonderful people with the question, if we greet people at the gates of heaven that we help get there, and I believe we will, who are we going to greet? I think that's the reason we're still here.
That's a great question. Who are you going to greet there? Because, the scriptures tell us that as we invest spiritually in people, as we help others get there, it continues on with us. Daniel, the Jewish prophet in about 500 BC writes this: those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens. Those who lead people to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. Which brings up a question: how will we appear to each other? Because it seems like people appear different to different people. And this was kind of a question for me as I studied this. Some said people appeared ageless. Others said, well, they were around 28 or 29 or 30. Others saw their grandparents as they last saw them in their older age and yet somehow perfect. Others saw grandparents that were younger. So how will we look? Well, I think Jesus, the risen Jesus, gives us a clue. Because remember, Jesus could be recognized fully by his disciples. But there was another time when he was walking with some of his disciples on the Emmaus Road after he had risen. And they didn't recognize him for a long time until he broke bread, and then they did. So apparently he could appear differently in different circumstances. And I think in the life to come we can too. Which kind of makes sense because on earth we don't always appear the same to each other. We don't always wear the same clothes, and we won't appear the same or necessarily wear the same things there either. In fact, Marv Besteman, a bank president during his near-death experience, said he was wearing golf slacks in his favorite shirt that he played golf in. And he noticed others of different nationalities there, some in African togas, some in Indian saris, the dress of their culture. But then Dr. Mary Neal, you may have noticed, talked about her welcoming committee was just bursting, she said, with love, but the love was light coming out of them, and wearing white robes. And many people talk about that. In fact, it's in Revelation 7:9. John says, there before me was a great multitude that no one could count from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, Jesus. And they were wearing white robes. Now, people don't always see other people in these robes, but I've come to believe these robes are not actually white, they're translucent. But they appear white because they let the light of God, the glory of God, the love and joy of God shine through them to those other people. And what if the more we spiritually invest in people in this life, what if the more we lead people to follow God like Daniel talked about? What if the more we build into and build up people here, sharing the light and the love of God here is how much of the glory, the light and love and joy of God you get to express through you, flowing through you there. I mean, imagine, could there be any greater reward than experiencing the joy and the love that the Creator created, flowing through you to others? And Jesus said the same in Matthew 13, then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. And NDEs say that different people appeared with different brilliances. None as brilliant as Jesus. That makes sense too, because in Romans 8:17 it says, but if we are to share God's glory, we must also share his suffering. What if the amount we're willing to go through suffering or sacrifice for the sake of others in this life determines how much of the glory of God we get to experience on the other side? Jesus loved us sacrificially. How will you sacrificially love and serve and invest in people? When you lead, when you teach others. And moms, as you're investing in your kids, dads, as you're investing in your kids, that matters, right? It goes on. And those of you leading groups, those of you spiritually investing in others, teachers, those of you teaching children, that may require sacrifice, sometimes suffering, right? COVID crazies, but it's worth it because it goes on with us. It matters. In fact, look at what Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, says in 1 Peter 5. Care for the flock, the group of people that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you'll get out of it, but because you're eager to serve God. Don't lord it over people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And when Jesus, the chief shepherd, appears, you'll receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor. People last. Invest in them. Now, all this may bring up a kind of troubling question about relationships in the life to come. My wife, Kathy, used to not really like to talk to me about heaven because she would say, but we're not going to be married there. And that made her sad. And that's good, right? I'm glad. Not good if she said, but we're not going to be married there. See, it's all in the tone, right? And she was sad because of this idea that there won't be marriage in the life to come. That all comes from a time that Jesus was asked a trick question by the religious leaders called the Sadducees, who, by the way, didn't even believe in the afterlife. So they asked Jesus this question. They say, hey, Jesus, a woman's married and her husband dies and she remarries and the second one dies and it happens 7 times. Who's she going to be married to in heaven? They're like trying to trick him. And that is a lot of where this whole idea comes from. And some of you have been asking the same question, I know, because all your exes may live in Texas, but you're just not sure you want them living next door in heaven, right? Be honest. Okay, but Jesus answers in an important way. He replied, you're in error because you don't know the scriptures or the power of God. In other words, he's saying the power of God can unite people in ways that all our relational squabbles and challenges in this life, by God's love and power, we can overcome there. And by the way, we can overcome them here if we let his love rule and unite us. But he goes on and Jesus says, at the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They'll be like the angels in heaven. Now notice something. Jesus did not say you will not be married. He said you won't marry. In other words, choose to marry or be given. There were arranged marriages back then in marriage. There won't be any new individual marriages. There will be no procreation because we'll be like the angels, eternal. So there will be no new families, but that doesn't mean we won't be with the people we love most. And in fact, many NDEers saw their grandparents there together in heaven, or their parents there together. Now, how does God work out, multiple healthy, loving marriages on the other side? I have no idea, except bathed in God's love, what people say is nothing is wrong. Everything works. And just think about it. Relationship will be so different. Nothing will be hidden. Communication will be perfect. And so imagine how it will change our relational dynamics, and think about how we can bring more of that relating to earth today. NDEers say that communication is perfect. It's heart to heart, full understanding. I think it's what God said to the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 65:24, when he said, before they call, I will answer. While they're still speaking, I will hear. It's this perfect heart-to-heart communication. You know, Crystal McVeigh, whom I'll be interviewing tonight at 7:30, she describes the communication of heaven like this. There was instant and complete communication between us. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine a password that if you let me use it, gives me instant access to everything you've ever said, thought, or felt, past, present, or future. Instantly, I'd have a more complete understanding of you than would ever be possible on earth. Well, that's what it was like there. And just imagine that kind of communication. Perfect communication with nothing hidden, understanding each other fully. And that's how we ought to try to live today. That's what it means to bring more of heaven to earth today, as Jesus prayed. You know, think about it. If we can allow God's love today, God's forgiveness today, God's grace to let us be more transparent and open with one another, just think about the unity we could have together. I mean, if I understand more of your history, if I understand more of what you've been through, more of your motives, if I seek to understand more of you than just have more of me understood and listen more to you than just have me heard, just think about the oneness we could experience. It's what they experience in heaven. It's what Jesus prayed for his last night on earth. When he said, I pray for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father. Just as you're in me and I'm in you, may they also be in us so that the world would believe you've sent me. As we bring more of heaven's communication to earth by seeking to listen and understand others more than trying to be heard and understood, you know, we answer God's prayer. Heaven is going to be this incredible reunion and unity and seeing the people that we've loved on earth, but even more. Imagine meeting the ancestors you never knew. You know, I had a chance to sit down with Christy Beam from the movie Miracles from Heaven. She was played by Jennifer Garner in that movie. And Christy is Annabelle's mom. Annabelle had a near-death experience, and listen to what she says about who she met in heaven.
When Annabelle was about 4 years old, she started having what we call tummy troubles. And when she was 5, she fully obstructed abdominally and we almost lost her. She had a major surgery, many doctor's appointments, ER, procedures, tests, for them to find out that she had an incurable digestive disorder called pseudo-obstruction motility disorder. So Annabelle lived on 10 medications a day, and she took them several times throughout the day. She, in and out of hospitals, we used to fly to Boston to see the guru of pediatric gastroenterology specialty in Boston, Dr. Samuel Nurko, every 4 to 6 weeks for treatments. And then the other times we were at home, she was on the sofa in a fetal position with a heating pad on her stomach. That was her life. And she had decided that she didn't want to live anymore. She was 9 years old. It was 2011. And she had said, you know, Mommy, I just want to die. And, you know, where there's no more pain. And so I just remember saying to her, Annabelle, I was devastated because she's a fighter. She never, ever stopped fighting. And then she was done. And that particular day, Abby, my oldest daughter, encouraged her to go out and play, which was a miracle that she did because she was just so weak and frail. But they did. And so they were in this cottonwood tree, sitting on a branch 30 feet in the air, and that branch began to give way. And Abby, in her quick wit and thinking and brilliance, she said, Anna, get your weight off the tree and go in that little hole where a branch had been, but it had fallen and left a hole. And it was hollow all the way to the ground. And so Anna went in the hole and fell 30 feet head first. And she said she went to heaven. And she said that she sat on Jesus' lap and that he told her that she wanted to stay because it was so peaceful and there was no pain. And that was it. She was out of pain. And he told her that it wasn't her time, that she had to go back. But he had plans for her on earth that she could not fulfill in heaven. And that when the firefighters got her out, there would be nothing wrong with her. She said, I knew I was in heaven because I saw my Mimi, and that is my husband, Kevin, his father's mother, so her great-grandmother. But she said she didn't recognize her at first because she was so much younger. And then when she realized that's Mimi, and she's so much younger, she said, I knew I must be in heaven. She saw a little girl, and she said, I kept looking at that little girl because her face looked and reminded me just of you, Mommy, and of Abby, her big sister, one of her sisters, but her big sister. And she said, I kept thinking, I know that face. And so she said she asked God, who is that little girl? And he said, Annabelle, that's your sister. That was what confirmed in my heart for me, okay, this is so very real, because I had shared with the girls that I had had 2 miscarriages, but I never shared with them that one of them was an actual viable pregnancy that I lost, and one of them was called a blighted ovum that never truly was life created. But she didn't know that. She just knew that I'd had 2 miscarriages, and the fact that she saw one little girl in heaven was totally amazing to me. Today, Annabelle is on 0 medications, 0. She's been released from the care of her pediatric gastroenterology specialist, and she eats whatever she wants, whenever she wants. There is no known cure. They have never had anybody have pseudo-obstruction, it be confirmed with more than 1 motility test, and then be cured of it, except for Annabelle.
You know, and Annabelle's one more line of evidence that God is real, but even more that relationships last. And she met, you know, her miscarried sister that she had never met. And that's what convinced Christy that this was real. This really happened. And you know, today, many of you, I'm sure, have had miscarriages and have grieved the loss of children. And I just want you to know, you know, first, God grieves with us, but it's not the end of the story. You know, David, who wrote many of the Psalms in the Bible, lost a child in birth and grieved that child. And then he said this in 2 Samuel 12, can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. And you know, if you have lost a child, if you've had a miscarriage, you will go to that child. There will be a great reunion. You know, Megan, who had the near-death experience at 6 years old, actually had a second one when she was miscarrying. She was bleeding profusely, and she began to leave her body again. But listen to the message she got that maybe some of you need to hear as well.
From that time on, I was just bleeding profusely, and it was very painful as well, and I was trying to lie down and rest. And one of the times I was lying down, I had the sense, the soul of the baby leaving me, and I just started to follow. I guess I left my body, and I just started to follow the baby. And the baby turned to me and said, you know, I love you so much. You did nothing wrong, but you can't come with me, you know, and he left. When the spirit of the baby left me, I saw a male spirit. I knew his name was Michael, and he just talked to me and said, you know, don't worry, this, you know, I love you, and you did everything right.
And one day it'll all be made right. You know, all the relational losses, all the relational mistakes, all the relational misses, God promises it will all come together in perfect love of God, perfect communication, you know, perfect unity, relationship the way it was meant to be. But you know, we can bring more of heaven to earth today. And that's Jesus' prayer. He taught us to pray, Father, your will be done on earth through me as it is in heaven. So how can we do that? Well, today, bless your mother. You know, none of our mothers were perfect, but we wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. And they did their best, and they deserve our gratitude. They deserve our blessing. So take time to really bless your mother. Maybe they're not on earth anymore like mine, but you can thank God for them and just say thank you. God, for my mom. And thanks, Mom, for all you did for me. And then look for opportunity to help others get there. Because all those who have received the love of God, the forgiveness of God offered through Christ, they're with God and with each other for eternity. But help people know. People are struggling. So share your spiritual story with them. Share God's story with them. And then make things right with broken relationships. If you know there's a relationship and God's Spirit's been prompting you that you've done something wrong, just apologize. It's not worth it to hold on to it. And forgive. Whatever they've done to you, forgive as God forgives you. Forgiveness is the way that we can be set free, not be held hostage to the past and what people have done to us. And then invest in the future generation. If you have kids, take advantage of this opportunity. You have an opportunity to not just watch TV, but invest in your family. Go use our online kids curriculum to spiritually build into your kids during this time. Or if you don't have kids, find ways to serve and invest in the next generation. But remember above all, people last. They matter to God. Invest in them. Relationships were meant to last. Before I pray, I just want to say, I hope that many of you will join me tonight. I'm going to interview Crystal McVeigh. Megan, who you heard, is going to be on there answering questions, as well as Crystal. Crystal went through a lot of trauma and abuse as a child and always wanted to ask God, why? Why did you allow that? And then she got to come tonight and listen to what she discovered. And then many of us are struggling and grieving just in light of injustice and what happened with Ahmaud Arbery. And just want you to know that on our Gateway Austin Facebook page, there's going to be a prayer of lament that our pastors are going to be leading if you want to join us over on the Facebook page right after this. Well, let's pray together. God, we do, first of all, grieve the tragedies and injustices that divide relationship, divide people, racial injustices, hatred, things that hurt and harm the people you love and us to each other. God, thank you that this is not the end of the story, it's the beginning. Thank you for your promise that you are making all things right ultimately. And God, today we just thank you for our moms. We thank you for the way they invested in us, the sacrifices they made for us. We honor them. And Lord, we all want to be people who invest in people, and especially in the generation to come. Those who can be led to see your love and your light, we want to show that to them. And we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Dear moms, and by that I mean those who have mothered, for I have been mothered by many. I had to be carried long after those first 9 months, so I speak to the great chain of moms passing along a baby in a basket. We have always done this, from the mom of Moses who surrendered her child to save him, to the river that carried him, to the princess who saw him, to the sister who suggested that his birth mom nurse him until the princess could raise him in a castle. This mom stuff has never been simple. An ensemble story full of nuance, sacrifice, loss, and uncertainty. That's what makes today hard. An exhausting job description. None of this fits on a card. And yet, it's so nice to get a note that somebody wrote. So, dear moms, some of us want to celebrate you. Some of us want to become one of you. Some of us feel failed by you. Some of us failed you. Some of us miss you. Some of us never knew you. We don't know how to honor you with room enough for all of you and all of us. Where do we start? This is why we have Hallmark. Dear moms, dear mom, I suppose some words will fit and some won't, but today we say something because no one got grown by accident. So whether you look like a mom on TV or whether your motherhood played out non-traditionally, dear Mom and dear all those who helped carry my basket. I should have just got a card in a little plastic packet. Dear those who loved something into being. Dear artists, activists, those who've given birth to something new, those who struggled and labored to make room for something fragile, for someone to grow. How did you know which direction to go? And how did you go that way slow? In a world that loves anything hands-free and everything instant, hidden behind filters, driven by results and reviews, shortcuts and loopholes, bought into a myth that we're in control, where did you learn to be patient? How do you do so much in secret? Who taught you to trust the sound of your voice? And without any promise of any particular product, how do you wake up and surrender to the process? How do you give away so much before we can even say thank you? And worse, after we totally can, but forget to. What is this love? Can you teach us it? I'm in awe of it. Dear moms, dear mom, dear teachers, coaches, those who've nurtured something small and wild, an idea, a project, a team, a puppy, a child. Thank you for the gestures of love that I didn't see as love at the time, for asking about the details of my day even when I'd much rather hide them, for washing soccer jerseys that smelled like something had died in them, for spending time on recipes that I only picked at. I don't know why I didn't like Brussels sprouts then. Did you try roasting them? Anyway, thanks for loving me when I was a brat. I couldn't find a card that says this like this. Mom, you teach me more about who God is. A gentle river that carried Moses in a basket, the same spirit in you when you held me for as long as my sadness lasted. We sing of God the Father. Words have limits. But I learned from you that women too were made in the image. Thanks for all the stuff you did that was separate from me, for showing me that you could serve and love and still be your own whole. Dear moms, dear mom, dear anyone who's let something go. Thank you for releasing me so that I too could grow whole. For shedding ideas of who you thought I would be in order to receive who I am. For all the times you let me decide. Thank you for letting me go to Brittany Fisher's after prom. Nothing bad happened and I had a really good time. For pushing me to lead long before I was ready. For space to fail, to fall, be a little unsteady. Thank you. For dropping me off at kindergarten, college, and the church where I got married. I still need you, even if I no longer need to be carried. But thanks for all those scary days when you put a basket in the river, gave it a nudge, and prayed. Which reminds me, dear moms with regrets and moms far away, dear precious moms of children who've strayed, dear moms who won't get a card this year, dear anyone building new worlds for our children, dear moms in fear of the world that we're giving them, dear moms risking everything in order to save them, dear moms on the edge. May the river carry you today. I think that's what I'd like my card to say. May you feel mothered once again. May you feel the Spirit moving in, holding you close for as long as this lasts, for as long as you are. Dear Mom, and dear all who enter into this absurd contract, all who dare to love, nurture, and release, all who tend to the emerging of things. I wrote you this letter, not much better than something store-bought. It's not enough, nothing ever will be. You've always been so far ahead of me. I'll leave it to the river and hope it catches up with you. No matter where you are, no matter where we stand, if not today, some unremarkable day, may you stumble into grace, and may this fill you up. That you are loved, that it mattered, that it is enough.
So what is your next step today? Because we all have one. And we can all find our next step at gatewaychurch.com. So 3 things that you can find in your next step. Number 1, get connected. Click the Get Connected button. And as a reminder, if you fill that out and you live in the Austin area, we will send you a copy of Imagine Heaven by John Burke. Number 2, at gatewaychurch.com, you can actually request prayer. Click Live Prayer and somebody will pray with you right there online. Or you can call the number on your screen right now and somebody will answer that call and pray with you. And the third thing is, tonight at 7:30 p.m., John Burke we'll be interviewing Crystal McVeigh because she got to do something many of us only dream of. If you ever asked yourself the question, when I see God, I'm going to ask him this, well, she was able to do that. So join us tonight to hear her story. 7:30 p.m. at live.gatewaychurch.com. We're so glad you were with us. We love you guys, and we'll see you back online.